first 4
So
years.
did you go to college?
No.
Okay.
No.
No need.
No. We had a thing called the VEEP program back then. And the VEEP program was not a good program to be on. I can't understand how anybody got conned into that, thinking they're going to go to college off the VEEP program. Matter of fact, I think they actually did a study years later, and not very many veterans actually got a college degree off of that program.
Right. So what did you do? So you're no longer in the Army.
I left the Army. I was going to go back to the oil field. It just so happens that the summer of 1985 was also the time that OPEC lowered their price of barrel from crude oil. I think it was like $12 or something. It went way down. So by the time I got out to Texas, all the pipe yards were full, and everybody was laid off. And I was going to go up to Utah, but I was pretty much told, don't come up here. There's no work, So I ended up driving a jackhammer in Albuquerque, New Mexico, living with my dad and his new girlfriend, and ended up driving a jackhammer. And just hating life. I'm like, what did I get out of the military for?
Right. So how long was this span?
For
your stint in between military tours?
Well, this span wasn't very long. I was trying to get back into the military, and I did visit a group of reserve Green Berets in Albuquerque, and we all went to lunch and everything. And these guys wanted to wear their Green Berets inside the restaurant and chase girls and everything, and that didn't sit well with me. Mm-hmm. So I held this job maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks, and I wrecked my truck deer hunting, and I decided, my final paycheck from the Army showed up. It took me a while. It took a while for it to get to me, and I was like, I'm out of here. And I was reading Soldier of Fortune magazine, so I went to Belgium, and I was going to join this mercenary outfit that they were advertising for in Soldier of Fortune magazine. Made this place called Charlie's Bar. They couldn't answer. I mean, it was a card table and a pay phone, and this guy was telling me, we're going to send you to Sri Lanka. Couldn't give me a G2, couldn't tell me what was going on, couldn't tell me how I was getting paid. And this was on a Friday, and I said, I'll come back and see you Monday. So I ran down into Paris, spent all my money on booze and women, wasted the rest, and saw this poster for the French Foreign Legion and told the taxi driver to take me there. And that was August, early September maybe of '85. I was in the French Foreign Legion.
Just like that.
Just like that. Just like that.
Now, I remember when we, as a unit, A15, went to Djibouti, which is a French property. The Legion was there, and there were times we would have to hide Sue out of the way.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have amounted to anything personally, but
no, as long as I was active duty, I don't think they were ever going to pick me up. I ran into them several times. Yeah.
So you were in the Legion.
Well, yeah.
For how long?
A little over 14 months, maybe.
Okay.
14 months on a 5-year contract. Yeah, because I showed up to Fort de Nogent, which is in Paris, and then they put us all in these blue tracksuits, and they sent us down to Marseille. And my first day in the Legion, I was like, I'd heard about the Legion and things like that, but everybody had kind of exaggerated the persona of the Legion, right? And I didn't speak a word of French, not a word of French. And matter of fact, they take your passport, they take all your IDs, your driver's licenses, everything.
New man.
Yeah, they take everything away from you.
It's like,
Why?
Is it like going to the wall?
Well,
A whole new family?
yeah, it wasn't that bad yet. They haven't decided whether they're going to accept you yet or not.
Right.
Right. The only thing they did give me back was my challenge coin that the Rangers had given me. I had number 6 Ranger Recon coin. They gave me that coin back, and then on the coin said, Ranger Regiment, but on the mural on the wall it said Legion Étranger, which is E.T. Ranger, the way I translated it. And I'm trying to tell this NCO that's taking all my stuff, and I'm going to do okay here. I'm a Ranger. Get out of here. And I went back into the hallway, sat down in a line of chairs that were backs up against the wall, and I was sitting next to an English guy. You could still see that mural on the wall, and I said, I'm going to do okay here. I'm a Ranger. It says Ranger up there. And he says, that says Legion Étranger. That means foreign legion. You told him you were a foreigner, mate. And I'm like, oh, I better learn how to speak this language. And I put my coin away. And then that evening we went to the réfectoire, the dining hall or dining facility, the mess hall we call it. But it was in the middle of the fort. They have these big earthen walls and everything, but there's a small building, probably 3 times the size of this building, in the middle of the compound, and that's where you go eat. Right? Well, I got up to the door, and it was a screen door. It's still summertime, still early autumn, still warm outside. Well, the screen door slammed in my face, and we'd all been to jump school before. What do? You go to parade rest and wait for somebody to call you in. I couldn't really see through the screen. And so I went to parade rest, and I'm standing there, and there's a line forming up behind me, and I hear somebody go, "Hey, pussy!" What? Hey, pussy Laporte. And I'm like, looking behind me, and I'm like, somebody's calling me a pussy, I balled up my fists and everything, and I turned around, and I was ready to take on anybody on the line that wanted to call me a pussy, and that English guy's like 7 guys back. He's saying, push the door, mate, let's go eat. Oh,
My bad. My bad.
Got to learn the language. So, we went on you get put on a train, wherever you join the Legion at. You get put on a train, you end up in Marseille, a place called Aubagne, which is just outside of Marseille in southern France. And that's where you go through your written tests and PT tests and things like that. And they decide whether they run your name through Interpol, and they decide whether you're going to be accepted into the Legion. And if you do get accepted, 99% of the time they're going to change your name, change your identity. But I didn't have nothing to hide. No divorce, nothing to hide. So I'm one of the few people that got to keep my name, And we went to Castle Naudry, where we did basic training, and the whole time, it's just completely. I mean, you talk about being disappointed at Fort Knox or Fort Gordon. I was devastated when I got to Castle Naudry. All we were learning was, these French songs. I was learning French, but I was just marching around singing French songs, And the training in itself was the tactics were awful, just completely. And I had just left the Rangers. And granted, I was Ranger Recon, but I'd been to Ranger School too. I knew, what kind of good infantry tactics were compared to what we were getting trained on. And these people are going to get a bunch of people killed. They don't care, But it was absolutely awful. And the only hope I had beyond hope was that I'd get put in the parachute regiment. Mm-hmm. They only had one, which was the Dusium Rep in Corsica. And we got through basic training, and you go up through a board of 3 people, and they said you're not going to you're going to go to a mechanized regiment. And I was like, no, I'm going to the parachute regiment, or I'm not going to be here. It's just that simple. No. Well, I had my my welcome to the Army tattoo, and I just ripped the sleeve off of my uniform, showed them that I was a paratrooper, and I said, I'm going to the parachute regiment, or I'm not going.
Mm-hmm.
So they sent me to the parachute regiment. And so that's, you get on a ferry and you go down to, you leave Marseille and you go down to Corsica, Corsica, and then you go there, and jump school is exactly the same. Imagine, pretty much the same exercises, the same swinglander trainer, everything. Only there's only like 12 of you in the whole class, not 400.
Right.
Right. So I was in the Dusium Rep, and I had a buddy named Mick Purcell, Irish guy, tattoos all over him. Loved Elvis songs. He could recite every Elvis song there was and everything. But we were hoping that we would get put in the Marine Company, which was beaches and warm sand and stuff like that. No, we got stuck in. We got through jump school, and we got stuck in the second company, which was the Mountain Company. So we got put on a truck and drove along those nice, beautiful beaches, and 6 hours later we're ass deep in snow with half pants on. We were in the Mountain Company. So that was my introduction to the Legion.
So, how long in the Legion? 14 months, you said?
Yeah.
About 14 months?
Yeah.
So, how did you disconnect? Did you just look left and right, got on a plane and came back, or how did that work out?
Well, you got to understand that this is still mid '80s, right? Ronald Reagan's still the president. Francois Mitterrand is the president of France, and he made Jimmy Carter look like a warmonger. I mean, Francois Mitterrand was a punk, and there was only like 9 Americans in the whole regiment, right? And one of them I knew in the Rangers, a guy named Brock Robinson, and while we were there in Corsica, the President of the United States had sent F-111s after Gaddafi to try to kill him, right? And he'd missed, but the F-111s weren't allowed to go through French airspace. They had to go all the way around Spain, get refueled, and then but the French were still very upset about it. Well, the French Foreign Legion, you think most of them are French or are foreigners. Well, at the time, half of them were French citizens anyway, but they had just changed their name and everything. They had a horrible conscription army, so a lot of guys who were in the French Foreign Legion were actually French citizens, right? But they had just changed their name and said they were Swiss or they were Canadian or whatever. Well, all of us Americans got ostracized. I mean, we were treated like dirt because of this whole thing, because they were worried about retaliations from Arabs, trash can bombs and stuff like that, which didn't make any sense to me because, I was one of the bigger guys in my platoon, and if we all go drinking together or something, we would go into there, we would set down our kepi blanc, which is the white hat, set it in a pyramid, and then I'd go to the door and say, "Tous les Arabes out the door," all Arabs out. We're not drinking with Arabs, right? And if they didn't leave, the fight was on, But anyway, we were treated like dirt. A lot of the Americans were like, "Oh, the hell with this. We're just going to get out of here." And a lot of them left. Brock Robertson, one of them, he acted like he kicked a ladder over and acted like it had fallen. We were just doing details anyway. We weren't doing much training, and they took him up to Bastia, and because we didn't have an X-ray machine there, and they X-rayed his back. Well, he'd been in a couple of those aircraft that went down in the 2nd Ranger Battalion. He was on both of them, or 2 of them, and he had compressed disc in his back and everything. So they kicked him out medically, gave him French citizenship and everything like that. Well, I decided I was going to be a little bit more political, and I said, hey, I haven't really quite been here a year yet and everything. I think I just need to go home. I don't want to fulfill my contract, and he had a right to do that. So I got to go back on the boat, back to Marseille, back to Aubagne, sit in front of a board of colonels, and they pretty much felt the same way I did. You're not Ronald Reagan. I'm not Francis Mitterrand. Get your ass back on the boat and go back to work. And their records for the French Foreign Legion were incredibly. I mean, a little notebook that big, and here's how you did on the test, and that was it. None of the other peripheral crap that the United States Army did. And so I was like, well, that didn't work. So I went over to Aubagne. Was also a place where you processed out after doing 5 years. So they had a little clothing store there, which probably where my civilian clothes got sold anyway.
Right.
So I went in there and bought a couple sets of civilian
Those
clothes.
pants are mine. That's my shit.
I went in there and bought a couple sets of civilian clothes, and when it got dark, I jumped the fence and went up to Paris. Made my way up to Paris. Met up with Brock Robertson there, and he was already doing unarmed bodyguard stuff, and I was out of money. He loaned me some money, and we did what every young man does: drink and chase girls. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I didn't really want to call my dad. I didn't like the idea of using my parents to get out of my messes, and which they probably would have helped me out because they hadn't heard from me at all. You're not allowed to really write and tell everybody where you're at. Even though I didn't change my name, I wasn't allowed to correspond with my family. And so I went and I took what little bit of money I had, and I went to the embassy and I got a temporary passport. And then I met back at the bar with Brock Robertson, and he's like, I got an idea. Why don't you just turn yourself in and they'll kick you out? And you're already AWOL and everything. And I'm like, well, that's a good idea. So before I do that, I put everything in an envelope, and I sent it to my stepmother in Texas, with a little note saying, a little postcard saying, if I ever call back for this, be ready to send it to me. So I put that temporary passport in, and I sent it to Texas. And then I went and turned myself in. Well, we drank the rest of the night, of course.
Finished.
And then once the bars closed, I tried to turn myself into some gendarmerie, and they didn't even. I was wearing my PT T-shirt and everything, and I had a buzzed head. They didn't believe I was AWOL from the Legion. So I had to get in a taxi, and I had to go all the way back to Fort Denaudin and turn myself in there, because the gendarmes wouldn't even give me a ride, So it wasn't. That doesn't count as being arrested. It wasn't until I got to Fort Denaudin. then I went to jail.
You did that yourself. It's fine.
So yeah. So then I went to jail, and then they put us back on the boat. They took us back to southern France and put us back on a boat. There was me and a couple other guys that had gone AWOL. And you got to remember, you don't not remember, but you got to understand that the Legion had an 80% desertion rate. Mm-hmm. 80%. Nobody did 5 years in the Legion. So we went and got back on the boat, and this adjutant gave us, like a warrant officer, gave us 100 francs each and said, here, you guys get drunk. Don't give me any hard time, and we'll get back to Corsica. And then I got back to Corsica, and I did 10 days solitary confinement, which was absolutely horrible, and 20 days hard labor. Because the guy running the NIC, we called it the NIC back then. The guy running the NIC or the correctional facility there was Vietnamese. Hated Americans.
I can see that.
Because Americans were supposed to come back and help him out in 1975. Did we ever come back? No. Right. So his family barely made it out of Vietnam. All right. And he ended up marrying an American Vietnamese girl. But absolutely hated American soldiers. And I was a former American soldier. So during my 10 days of solitary, he would actually make me sit on the floor in my underwear and handcuff me to the water pipes that are about that far off the ground, going through those cells, because these are all old buildings and all electricity and all the water had been put in later. And I'd have to sit there all day, handcuffed there, and then they'd bring dinner, and they'd take a bar of soap and they'd cut it up and they'd mix it in your food, and want me to eat that, knowing that I'm going to have diarrhea and make a mess all over myself. So I didn't eat much that 10 days of solitary. So, and then hard labor wasn't nothing. It was just being working extra hard on details. And that was about it. And I thought, well, now they kicked me out. Well, I got out of the NIC, and they're like, no, most of your stuff's gone. Everybody thought you went AWOL and left, so they stole your stuff. So I had to start over buying. You had to buy your own gear and everything. And so since you don't have any gear, you can't go to Djibouti with us. So I got on the plane and took my company to Djibouti, but then I came back, with the vehicles they always had a company going to Djibouti to do training and everything, and usually a truck or something need maintenance would come back to the island and get maintenance. So I rode back with that, and I was stuck up the mountain camp. We went up to the little chalet up in the mountains and had a big old Quonset hut. My job was to fill it up full of firewood and do dishes at night with the cook, and I was the driver. I had a driver's license and everything, so I was one of the company drivers. And I would take the cook in to get fresh food every other day or something like that. And so I was stuck there, and my company did a rotation in Djibouti and Ethiopia on the Ethiopian border for 4 months. So I was up there in the mountains, in Corsica, and learned all the trails and stuff like that. But they had this little, what do you call it? The Globetrotters. There was a hand inside the window, which for the Globetrotters and all the kids that travel all over Europe and everything, that hand means here's a place to stay in a hostel. You can come in there and get a place, usually something to eat, and at least have a place to sleep. And we had a detail of probably 8-9 people there, and they would rotate the officer every week. The officer would come up and take like a little vacation, and he would hang out up the mountain camp. And so I learned all the trails and stuff up there, and cut the firewood and loaded up the truck and sit there and split the wood and started filling up this Quonset hut full of wood so we could do winter training the next winter. And I got to know people in town, right? And one of my duties kind of fell on me later after about a month of doing this was get the mail too. So I got a little postcard and I wrote my mother, hey, send me back that passport. Right. And I started getting in shape, I started going on runs and everything and doing push-ups and sit-ups and all that kind of stuff and climbing the little rope we had out there. And I got to doing all that knowing that I was going to take off. I wasn't going to stay in the Legion, And, well, when even that Vietnamese adjutant come up there, and his rotation up there, and he brought his wife and he brought his kid and everything, and they're, it's all in French and everything, and I'm supposed to be serving them meals and stuff like that. And well, the wife got to talking to me. She spoke good English, and she was asking me about what I lived in the United States and stuff like that, and I really didn't have anything to tell her. She being from California, she never went anywhere else in the country. I told her a little bit about me being in San Diego. But she goes, oh, say something to my son. Say something to my son, say it in English. I'm trying to teach him English. And I was like, yeah, eat all your food or I'm going to put soap in it. Yeah, that adjutant didn't like that too much.
It's funny. Eat your food or I'm going to put some soap in it. Fucker.
Fucker. So, but I would, on these little errands into town, I would buy like a pair of pants or I'd buy a shirt, and I was hiding it, out there in that Quonset hut. And I had a little rucksack, but I also had a little suitcase that folded into the rucksack, and I was just I was planning my getaway, and waiting for that passport to show up, and these 5 French women showed up one night, and they wanted to get led around to the waterfalls. There were some beautiful waterfalls at the base of this mountain that we were on. So I took them down to the waterfalls and everything, and there was three younger girls, and then one was a mom and one was an aunt. So there was like five of these females just traveling for the summer, and this was late summer, September, and they were working their way back, heading back up. They'd already done Sardinia, and they were working up Corsica, and they were going to go back up to school. And so I led them on the trails, and I told them that I was American. I wasn't going to be around much longer. That kind of stuff. I was going to get out of there. But then we fed them, and the next day I took them up the trail to the lake, to the north, up towards Bastia, and I took them about halfway, and I said, okay, I got to go back. So the dog and I went back to the compound, and then I got home, and the next day I went in to pick up the food and pick up the mail and everything, and my passport was there. I was like, okay, time to go. So I went back, and I told the cook, and he knew I was going to desert anyway, but I told him I didn't feel good, and I probably wouldn't be down for dinner. And my room was all the way at the top of next to the radio operator's room. Well, I'd been a radio operator before. My time in the Legion, I was a machine gunner, right? But I'd been a radio operator before. I knew a little bit about HF radios and everything was done by Morse code back in the 80s. So he wasn't there, so I took the antenna down in the trees, and I took the Cobra head out, and I put the RF cable or the cable back up in there and put the lanyards back up in the tree, but there was no Cobra head, so there wasn't going to send any signal. And I put that back up in the tree, and then I went down to the phone, and I undid the speaker in the phone. I took out the speaker and put a rock in there, right? And then I went out to the truck, and we had a truck and a Jeep, and I screwed out the governor of both of them, that they'd start up, but they wouldn't get any RPM, right? And then I made my bed up to where it looked like I was asleep in there, and went to the Quonset hut, and I got my rucksack and my clothes and everything, and I was in uniform, and I took off across them, same trail I'd taken the girls the day before, and I ran that trail, and I ran all the way up to the lake, and I made it by dark, right? And then I went around the lake, and then you could see the little village where you could get a train ticket the next day. And the stupidest thing I think I did, because while I was in the Legion, I thought, well, I'm going to keep a journal, and I'm going to write a book about my experiences in the Legion, so all the Americans would understand what it was like to be in there. I was thinking of all the guys that we served with and everything, and we always heard these stories about the French Foreign Legion. I was going to tell the truth about it. Well, I made a fire, and I burned my uniform, and I threw that book on the fire, and I burned it. And then I took that rucksack and put it inside the little suitcase, put my little fishing cap on, and walked to the train station. And I thought, well, the first thing that's going to happen to me is they're going to recognize my accent. And you got to understand, the Corsicans aren't really French. They don't like the French, right? They're not really Italian either. They don't like the Italians. But if you're a deserter or going AWOL from the Legion, you get paid. The Corsicans can get paid rewards from the French for turning these guys in, right? And they don't like the Legion, so they'll turn you in a heartbeat. So I was a little nervous about that. Plus, all the gendarmes knew who I was because every month or so we do like a little shooting contest or something. So I was always at the represented the company on the shooting team, and so I'm sitting there standing in front of the train station, waiting for them to open up the ticket office, and here come these five French women. And they said, are you leaving? I said, yeah, I'm on my way. I said, would you buy my ticket for me? I gave them the money, and they bought the ticket, so I didn't have to worry about my accent. Then I got on the train, and we probably made it the first 2 stops, and here come the gendarmes on the damn train. They know that there's a Legionnaire who's taken off, right? And I didn't have to worry about it because I had these 3 French women all over me, just kissing me and just rubbing their boobs all over me and everything. They didn't even stop to talk to me. They kept on going. And then we made it up to Bastia, where the boat was. And I knew usually most people go to Marseille, which takes all night, probably 10 hours on the Mediterranean, or I could go to Nice, which is 4. And I told the girls, here's money, go buy me a ticket to Nice, and I'll figure out a train from there. So they got me on there, and then they said, hey, our friend's really sick. Can he get on the boat early? You know, he's not feeling good and everything. Can he go lay down inside of his quarters? And they're like, oh, sure. They put me on the boat early, and I'm looking out the little portal and everything, and here comes the MPs, you know, looking at everybody getting on the gangplank to get on, or the gangway to get up to the boat. And I got away. I got to Nice and went straight to the train station, got on there, and went up through Paris, changed trains in Paris, went to Brussels. Back then, this was before the European Union, you know, so you had to show your passport at every single border crossing.
Right.
And I thought, well, I knew that the Belgians would probably extradite me, you know, but if I could make it past the French customs guys, you know, and the gendarmes are on there and everything. But again, I just lucked out because this Arab next to me, I mean, this guy was full-blown dish-dash and keffiyeh and everything. His paperwork was so screwed up that they didn't even ask to see my passport. I went right across that Belgian border, you know, and then I got on the People's Express. And I made it back to the United States. I had 2 sets of clothes and $5. And that was 1986.
Right. So
French Foreign Legion.
how did you get back here? Was it $20 is $20? How'd you get back? You said you had 2 suits of clothes and $5.
Well, I had.
How did you get back?
When I got off the plane in Cincinnati, I got off the plane. I had like $100 left, but there's this girl that noticed that I was, because I on the transatlantic flight. There was a bunch of people asking, French people were asking, hey, does my ticket work round trip? Is this going to take me to my destination? They didn't, and none of this was People's Express. It was like a real cheap airline, and none of the stewardesses spoke any foreign languages. So I was getting up and I was translating for all these people, you know. I said, yeah, your ticket will take you to Ontario or whatever, you know. Well, this girl was impressed with my ability to speak French, and she introduced herself to me, and she was talking to me. And when the plane landed in Newark, you know, you got to show your passport and everything. Well, mine had a big red stamp in it. It's temporary, you know. And I went up there and showed it to them. Then I had to go to a room off to the side. So I went off to the side, and there's the State Department officials in there, and said, okay, where you been? I said, I've been in the Legion. And they said, do you know that's illegal? I said, no, I didn't know that was illegal. I said, well, read the first couple pages of your passport. You're not supposed to serve in a foreign army or serve under a foreign flag. And I'm like, well, crap, did that. I mean, what do I do? I mean, I said, you got like an island that me and Benedict Arnold's going to hang out at, you know?
Right.
They're like, no, you just don't get another passport. Your days of traveling internationally are over. We'll never give you another passport. So they took my passport and they put it into this, you know, machine that just punched a bunch of holes in it, you know, kind of like on a compass course or something, you know, just bam, got a bunch of holes in the passport. And gave it back to me. Well, I come out of there, and this girl was waiting on me. You know, I'm like, wow, that was kind of strange. Why is she waiting on me? She's like, well, did you have any problems and everything? I was like, well, yeah, kind of. I'm not going to be traveling much anymore overseas. And she goes, let's get something to eat. She's talking to me. And everything. Well, she was from Cincinnati. And I told her, well, my buddy Jeff Matt from the Army, he's just across the river, in Covington, Kentucky. She said, oh, you should go visit him and everything. And I was like, that's a hint. This woman wants to take me home. Right? So I'm in. So I went and bought the ticket and everything and rode with her right next to her all the way to Cincinnati. And we get off the plane and everything. And we're walking to the front gate. I mean, to the doors of the airport and everything. She turns around and says, there's my boyfriend. Act like you don't know me. And then she just walked off.
That's bullshit.
So there I was in Cincinnati with 2 sets of clothes and $5.
See, I got it that he was in France still, didn't you? We thought you were still in France with 2 sets of clothes and $5.
No, I had to go up to Belgium and get on the plane. Yeah.
So, all right. So you're now a civilian who has deserted the French Foreign Legion, correct?
Yes.
And now you are you need to find something else to do,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So did you come back then, or did you wait a while?
To the military?
Yes.
Oh no, I waited a long time.
Okay.
I was done with military, sir. I was like, okay, this military thing ain't working so good. Not very lucrative. So I called my buddy Jeff Matt. He wasn't home. His dad was. His dad came and picked me up. His dad and I got along really well. The times that we went up to visit him, we would go up there from Fort Bragg to the WEBN fireworks. Great party, right? And his dad and mom were good people. They brought me right back to the house. Well, he's back at the house. He's working graveyard shift at the factory. So when my buddy Jeff Matt gets home, I'm in his bed sleeping, right? And I get up, and just because they were hosting me and everything, well, on the way through the Paris train station, I picked up a little miniature of the Eiffel Tower. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, that'd be nice.
Of course you did.
I took this little Eiffel Tower and I gave it to Mrs. Matt, Jeff's mom. And she just like rolling her eyes, and she thought that was the stupidest thing she ever seen. Well, I was like, what's going on? Well, there's this amusement park above Cincinnati called King's Dominion or something like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas there's a third of the size of the Eiffel Tower. So these little miniatures are for sale all over the place. She thought I was just up the road in Cincinnati, and I'm giving her one of these little cheap, brass Eiffel Towers. It's like, no, mine's from France.
It's real.
Pretty embarrassing. It was embarrassing. Just didn't, every time I tried to be cool, I wasn't cool. Didn't work.
I don't know why that does not surprise me. There's something coming to me.
So anyway, I was hanging out with Jeff, and then he's like, well, why do you got to go back out west? Why don't you just stay here? And I'm like, okay. So I got a job, and I think within a week or two, I paid $125 for a Ford LTD car and got a car.
This just stopped recording. We hit 2 hours.
Okay. Hey, well, good. Hold it.
Okay.
I gotta go potty anyway.
Is it 2 hours?